whole life has been lived in the Los Angeles area, and got into the entertainment field pretty early, probably 17, 18. There was no mystery kind of growing up in LA, kind of not what you do, but there was no, big mystique about it either for me. So I got into mostly in front of the camera, comedy and just performance. That was kind of my life. And a buddy I met pretty early on, back early 90s, was just a real, just wonderful Christian guy. I'm of Jewish background, 100%. Silverman's kind of a subtle name for Jewish person. And so I just, I had no interest in any more within Christianity or Christ than I was in my own Jewishness. It was just kind of who I was, right? I was just Jewish. That was our culture and everything. And this buddy of mine, I'll never forget that moment, early 90s, he was evangelizing and I could see it, and I wasn't interested, but he said, and I just said, to get out of it, I just said, hey, I'm Jewish and I'm proud of it. And his name was Tony, and he goes, well, you should be. And at that moment in my life, Dean, it was like, he could have said anything else. I would have been, oh, cool, whatever. And it was like a magnet. I was like trying not to respond, and I'm like, why? Right? And he goes, because Jesus was Jewish, and the apostles were Jewish. And I'm like, I literally sat there and argued. I'm like, no, they're not. They're Catholic, And that's all I knew, right? St. Peter's like, send me some Catholic statue somewhere or something. What does it even mean?
Get it straight.
Get it straight, Tony. So all that to say, it started a conversation with him that would be a couple of years of I wasn't interested in the Lord. I wasn't interested in repenting of sin. I just found it intriguing. He was a good guy to talk to. And so fast forward a few years later, he and I didn't talk for a long time. We parted ways. Not just life went on, but my life just kind of went downhill. And I got to a place where I was humbled by God, not realizing exactly what was going on. A lot more to the story, but randomly, coincidentally, I bump into Tony at a random gas station. Like I think it was on the way to Fillmore or something. I don't even remember where. I was like, no place you should bump into the guy, right? Total coincidence, right, Dean? And I was so happy to see him, and he'd invited me to church many times, and I always said no. And at this time, he invited me again. I'm like, I was so broken by that. I'm like, sure, what have I got to lose? And the only thing I'll add to that is that, to wrap it all, this is all testimony stuff going back 25 years ago, but I think this is kind of noteworthy that at that time in my life, Dean, as God was drawing me to himself, then my Jewishness mattered. Okay, it didn't matter up until then. I felt like, what does this even mean? So I met with a rabbi, and I was just like, who is Jesus? He's Jewish, I'm like, I have this new information to share with the world. And he's like, I get a list, and it says the 10 most influential Jews ever. And Jesus was listed 7th. Okay? And I look and I go, by listing him, you acknowledge he existed. And I'm like, 7th? They literally started time over for this guy. How is he behind Karl Marx? Or, it was just this bizarre thing. And the rabbi hemmed and hawed, and I don't mean to throw him under the bus, but he was just like, he couldn't give me any answers. I'm like, well, just who is he then? Who do you think and I was honestly looking, he just eventually pounds the table and says, that's not your concern. And I'm like, at that time in my life, I was like, all right, if that's the best you got, then I got to look somewhere else. Wow. So I started going to church. The rest is history. I got saved. I was in the film business. I walked away. I couldn't keep doing it. So more to the story, but that's kind of the gist of it. And then started making movies, became, as a director, found this incredible place called Kappa Studios with a K. Right. Turns out it's named, the K is after the owner's wife. Right. Met Paul. We just started becoming friends, started praying together. I was just a client of Paul's for many years. And to kind of bring the story home, in 2016 was when something I was doing fell through, and then timing was right, so he was gracious enough to bring me on board.